All right, everyone, welcome back. Here we go. Another data dive. Me and Fish are here. My name is Jeff French. I'm the founder of Blokpax. I'm also the founder of Louddoor, a leading market research and data intelligence company. We specialize and actually have patents in taking consumer sentiment data and allowing big companies, mainly Fortune 100, to build what are known as lookalike audiences to help solve very complex problems and reach very specific market segments. I'm building over here in the sports collectible space, the collectible space at large with Blokpax. It's a very big passion project for me and one that I love very much. And I wanted to bring that level of data and insight into our business. And I was like, let's just share it with everybody. So a lot of you that may have taken our research study, you're hopefully beginning to see the fruits of that labor, and we hope that you enjoy what this is unpacking, and we hope that you'll continue to participate in these studies quarter over quarter. So, Fish, how you doing today?
I'm
How's
doing
life
great.
out there in the mountains?
Oh, it's great. Colorado's where I'm at, and I love this area. And we get snow and sun, and it's just beautiful.
Love it, love it. Yeah, it's been rainy and dreary here for the last couple of days. So actually, yeah, just I get a couple of days. All right. So what we're going to jump into in this particular video is one that is a little bit more of a soft and squishy type sentiment. We've done some other stuff where we took you through some different indexes, a little bit more kind of what getting on the edge of kind of hardcore math. If you drive a lot deeper, you can really get into some hardcore math. This one, just much more check boxes and radio buttons to understand some sentiments in the market. And this is one that not overly complex. There's really two questions that are kind of the core of what we're going to talk about here. And those two questions are, what excites you about the year ahead in the sports collecting hobby? And what concerns do you have about the year ahead in the sports collecting hobby? And of course, what we do is we start with the way you do this is you start with doing some open-ended questions to a small cohort of people, and you get them to type in what their answers are. And then you have an analyst go in. The analyst will then look at that. And then from there, the analyst will shape a list of the things that they think need to be on that list. And then there's also another option to some of the people that come through the survey. Some don't get the other option, some do. And then what we're doing is we're constantly looking at the others to see if other things are surfacing that may need to get updated in the study to be an actual selection for future months. So that's how all that gets put together. And it really helps to make sure you don't have a lot of holes, you don't miss things. And it just leads ultimately to better data practices that give you better data, because it would be really easy for me and Fish to sit down and say, hey, let's just come up with what we think needs to go in this study.
Right.
And what you get is you get a study of what Fish and I think is important, and we're our own people, and we could easily miss on other things that other people find way more important. So, Fish, you want to take through some of the, what you want to start with? Good news or bad news? We want to go with what is exciting the market, or do we want to go with what's concerning the market? Which one do you want to dive into first?
I always say lead with the good,
All right,
and
we'll
then
lead
we
with
can
the good
get
news.
feel
All
that.
right, so
Um, yeah.
go ahead, Fish. Were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to say when you see some of these, it's really interesting how the number one thing they're looking forward to is really high percentage compared to the second thing.
Yep,
So
yep.
why don't you go into what that is?
Yeah, and so we see, when you see some of that too, like one of the things we do is word cloud some of that early freeform data that people put in. One of the first ways to let it jump off the screen is you just run what's called a word cloud. So it'll make a word bigger if it's shown up a lot more in the responses, and it'll make the word small if it
Ah,
hadn't shown up much. And sometimes it'll just jump right off the screen. And and then people will word things differently, right? So they'll say, like I may say that I can't wait to get some new things, or I may want some new of my favorite products, or whatever the way that you and I would say it differently. And a lot of people will type it differently. But then what
right.
happens is that we start having these recurring words in that word cloud that both of us, a lot of people use. When I first saw the word cloud, bam, new products. It jumped off the screen. And it jumps off the screen here as well. Over 50% of
Yeah.
people, that's the big thing that they want. They just want new releases. Like, people want new stuff. They want it more often. Even though there may be some sentiment about production levels and that sort of thing that we may talk about, people love new stuff. And in fact, that in our business, this type of insight caused us to shape. We knew it. It's not that we were idiots. We
Right.
knew people love new stuff, right? But we actually, when we saw the way it jumped off of the page from that original word cloud, which was conducted back in Q4 of last year, last end of the year, um, that's when we said, wow, we really need to look at our drop schedule, and we need to give people new
Yes.
stuff more often. So we actually are splitting for one of our main franchises, the Home Team Heroes, this year, we're splitting it into 3 drops for each sport, 9 drops instead of 3, driven off of this idea of new releases of favorite products and then keeping it fresh within each one. So a data-driven approach to releasing that. And but that's the big one. That's the one that goes over 50% of people choose it when it's there. Tons of people type it in freeform when it's not there. People love new products. I don't think that shocks anyone, but it's definitely something that just really does jump off the page on the excitement side. Um, the thing that actually surfaced second, then you start getting a lot tighter. You're talking about, in some
Right.
cases, only less than a percentage point separating one from the other. But following up to that idea of new releases, this is similar, but it is different. People cited that they wanted new chase cards. And that comes in at right at 25%, 24.4 is where the data is right now. And again, we're talking a sample size of like 25,000 collectors, normalized across different cohorts to make sure that the data is sanitized in the right way to give us the right result. Don't want to overskew one location any more than another, one age group more than another, want all of it to balance back to the way the hobby actually looks so that we have good data that we can look at period over period. But chase cards, 25%. Now, the next one, this is the first one that really surprised me. And this one actually, in the word clouding, didn't jump off the page nearly as much. I remember it wasn't very big and it kind of barely made the list. So maybe not barely. It was down near the bottom on the word clouding when people had to just type in what they were excited about. But once it was presented to them as an option, 23.8% saying that they're excited about attending local and regional shows.
Yeah.
23.8% to shows. Like that's a high number to me. Like I do not think that before COVID, when the hobby was kind of in its last, what I would call mature era before things went crazy. I mean, there were shows that were good. I remember that like the Dallas show was almost like a stock
Right.
market floor. I mean, there was a lot of interest there, but man, 25% of all collectors looking
Yeah.
forward to a show. Does that surprise you?
It surprises me, but actually listening to other like blogs and reading them and listening to other podcasts and YouTubes from people in the industry, experts, they've said over and over since the end of last year that their local regional scene has gotten better and better and better with attendance and vendors. That's the other thing I just want to point out. Part of this reason in my mind is because it's not just people going, it's the people also selling has gone up. So you have more diversity of cards, you have more cards overall. So I think this really surprised me. And then when I thought about it, it was less surprising.
So I can confirm that I have shared this data with a few folks that are friends of mine, some of which are also building in the sports collectible hobby, and I can confirm to you that there has been space booked for a new show, largely driven off of this data. There was a sentiment, there was a feeling that they wanted to do one. There was a little bit of
Right.
trepidation for demand, and the fact that maybe things were oversaturated. And then I said, well, I got some data here that says that that's probably not the case, that we're at an oversaturation point of shows. And when I showed them the data, it wasn't just this one question. There was other data that I pulled together.
Right.
They were like, oh, wow, let's do it. And literally within a week, they had a signed lease agreement for the space and they were going to do a show. And so that kind of warmed my heart. That's a
Yeah.
friend of mine. I didn't charge anything for that. Did it as a favor to pull that data together. But it was something that again helps take a data driven approach to something that otherwise wouldn't exist if those of you out there that took this study hadn't have given us your feedback. So we appreciate that. You made a new card show exist already. So that's pretty cool. And you've helped shape our products tremendously. Um, Coming in next after attending the card shows, this one, if you would have asked me ahead of time to peg this one, I would have said, I know that's a polarizing issue. I would have probably thought it would have been higher on both sides of the polarity, but
Hmm.
large bounties on rare chase cards, feeling excited about them, 22%,
That's high.
22.1%.
Yeah.
You think that like
Higher than I would have thought.
I thought that one had a shot on both. I thought that if you'd have told me ahead of time, if I would have filled out what I thought the market would say, I would have said 35% really love it, 35% hate it, and then the rest kind of sit in the middle and they don't really care. But it's lower than that, but it definitely still, I mean, it's in the top 5 of
Yeah.
things that people were excited about. And it's also, I'll go ahead and spoil this a little bit, one two, three. It's number three on the opposite side, but it is less. Like it's 19.8%
Right.
are concerned about it. So there is a little bit more excitement than concern as it relates to
Right.
card bounties, but it is one of the more polarizing issues in the hobby today, right?
So
So
I'll tell you why I thought it was less. I thought for sure it'd be less. And simply put, this is a newer thing in the hobby industry. You didn't have this kind of stuff even 5, 6 years ago.
yeah,
So I thought it would be lower because of that reason. And I was really shocked. But I wanted to say this is the type of data, which is a tool. Data is a tool for you to use to be able to do your own analysis and to uncover things and also help with your knowledge.
yep.
And this is one of those I wouldn't have paid attention to, man. Now, again, I'm going to pay attention to bounties and see the excitement and what people write about it.
Yep, and it'll be interesting to see how the bounties play out on getting product to be ripped that otherwise might not get ripped, right? And I mean, for those that know, we do more than just we're in the collectible space. So we do CCG and we do sports, and we love them both. And I think we have great expertise in both. We're not a pretender in either. We're pretty solid on both sides,
Yep.
but a product that just makes me think back on where a bounty was the biggest and it made the most impact on a product was the Lord of the Rings Magic the Gathering set.
Yes.
So not sports, but there was a one ring in that for those that are familiar from Lord of the Rings, and it was in those boxes, and it was an absolute mania,
Yeah.
right? And it led to a lot of that product getting ripped that maybe otherwise one wouldn't have been produced without that bounty, and two wouldn't have necessarily been ripped. So it does lead to a lot more
Hmm.
product out of packs than what might all otherwise be there. And then there's that interesting lane that, okay, well, then what about the sealed product, right? If everybody's ripping to
Right.
chase something, to chase a bounty, and you have the resolve to sit it out, as long as there's still a good value proposition in whatever that product is, doesn't matter if where it falls, sports or otherwise, there's a good lane to possibly run in there to be the person that's
Hmm.
still sitting on sealed wax. And um, so one other thing that surprised me with the excitement around the bounties and why it came in so high, excuse me, not so high, but why there's just this overall excitement of the bounties is I and this actually runs counter to what I said earlier when I said 35 and 35 would have been my guess. I do wonder how people process it mentally because I think most people say, well, I'm never going to hit that bounty, but it'd be great if
Hmm.
I did. I think that's the mindset of most people, right? I mean, do you feel differently? I mean, obviously everybody plays the lottery. We see in you walk into a casino, if you go through the different slot games and stuff, the ones with the biggest bounties typically have somebody sitting at them, and some
Yeah.
where the bounty's been hit, there's nobody there. So people
Right.
love these things. It clearly does move the needle, but do people really rip a product thinking I'm going to hit the $1 million bounty? This new upper deck product for hockey that's got the $1 million bounty on, I can't remember which card it was, but I think it's like a triple auto or something. But I mean, how much does that really drive people to buy the product and open it? What do you think?
I think it does, but I think for a different reason. Again, this is what's great about this data because it gets us discussing it. What I think it is it creates excitement. That's all. Just creates excitement. There aren't people that are going exclusively trying to get it. What they do is they hear about it. So I have a 13-year-old nephew. I've tried to get him into some other sports card stuff, and he didn't. And then when he heard about the Magic One Ring, he came to me finally, first time ever, and said, "Hey, Uncle Chris, can you actually go get me some of those packs and let's open it with my son, who was his best friend, and him." And so we actually went out and bought some just to do it together as a pack opening. We
Yep.
were excited.
Yeah, no, I could feel that it does create that just even though you may know in the back of your head that the odds are very long, there is that excitement there. So large bounties, a polarizing issue, one that folks can talk about probably actually the most likely thing is you're a little more apathetic about it because the most people are in the middle, but there are intense
Mhm.
folks on each side. And then next on the list was taking more trips to my local hobby shop. That's one that I love to
Yeah,
see, and you
I know.
combine that again with the idea of the local and regional shows, And it's pretty interesting that people want to do this in-person experience. You know, it's one thing to go on Dave and Adams or an auction house and buy a card and have it shipped to you, and you can build your collection that way, but it lacks that in-person connection, right? Um,
Right.
and
Exactly.
and even online, you know, a lot of things they can be you can have relationships online. And I know I feel this very strong. I have people that are my good friends now that I met through online card rooms over the last, 30 years. And they're still great friends of mine. And it all was born. Some of them I may have known them for 5, 10 years before I ever actually ended up at the same place as them and we had dinner and met for the first time in person. Like
Right.
so that's a very real thing. And that actually brings us down to the next two on the list. At 20% and then down at 17%, you have one is helping pass the love of collecting onto my kids, which you already spoke to. And then right
Yeah.
behind that is making some new friends in the hobby. And so, again, what we're able now to do with this data is we're able to take a group like that and then we can slice just that cohort of people. So we've got almost 4,000 respondents here that making new friends in the hobby is important to them. We have almost 4,500 that are individual people that say passing the love on to their kids is very important to them. One of the reasons that, for those who may not know, Bo Jackson partnered with us at Blokpax is because
Yeah.
Bo wants to pass on his brand to younger audiences. And so when we were talking with Bo, the conversations very quickly went to the idea that he wants the Bo brand to be something that can be that new younger audiences can relate to, because we all remember Bo
Right.
snapping bats over his head, running up walls, hitting the home run to
Hmm.
lead off the All-Star game with President Reagan in the booth with Vin Scully, stiff arming Dion and putting him in the
Yeah.
ground, and Dion then going on to say that Bo is the second most athletic person he's ever met behind his crackhead cousin Junebug, and all those amazing Bo Jackson stories. And the desire to pass it on, well, guess what? There's a real desire within the hobby to pass
Yeah.
it on. And we help them understand some of this data and how our products were particularly positioned to help achieve Bo's goal. And
Right.
we're doing some really amazing things with our superhero Bojack's, officially licensed by him. It's going to be a ton of fun. I'm an absolute fan of Bo's and super excited to have him in what we're doing. But this is the type of data that helps to drive that product forward, to
Yep.
understand that people want to pass this love on to their kids, and it's something that they are thinking about, right? It's intentional,
Right.
and in that early word cloud, kids was a word that popped out. It was there. I need to go back and find that. That's old data. We don't normally show those things, but I need to dig it out, and we'll have to do a different video. I'm not going to have it for this one, but it was another word that popped out, and it didn't have a lot of the context around it, because people were saying it in a lot of different ways. They would type it in
Right.
different ways. They may put kids early. My kids are learning about sports, or I want my kids to do this, or I want to pass on to my kids. But the word kids just keeps coming out, and it leads to that big thing. Not necessarily as big as new products, but it was still big, and it jumped out. So without letting this get too long, just to hit a few more of the things that people were excited about, buying into group breaks at 15%, new technology being put into cards and grading 13,
Yep.
and then another polarizing one, seeing what Fanatics is going to do to 10x the hobby, is one that folks have some interest in. There's a bunch more. We'll kind of stop there because we do
Right.
need to kind of get over to the concern side. But anything else you want to do on the good news before we flip over to what could potentially be the bad news, the concerns?
Yeah. I have a question for you. So this data that we collected, and there's 25,000 respondents, which is a huge amount. Are We're going to keep collecting this data, and we'll start to soon see trends, right, over time.
For sure. Yep. Yeah, that's a
Yep.
big
And
piece of
that's
what we
really
want to do
important.
here. Absolutely. And that's the thing with sentiment data. I've said this on our other videos, but sentiment is the leading indicator. Market behavior, sales, purchases, those are the lagging indicator. If you can understand the sentiment early, you can understand where markets are going. And
Right.
hedge funds paying a lot of money to understand where markets are going and get sentiment data. Brands understanding, because they have to make decisions a year, sometimes 2 years in advance on the consumer
Right.
product side. They have to understand sentiment and then try to be able to predict where their business is going. If you only look backwards and use comps and use sales performance, which we have a ton of that. There's a lot of great
Right.
companies that organize that. I love it. I'm a geek. I read all of it. Alton Insights, keep coming, baby. Show me more and more. Everything you guys dig up, I'll read it. And so I love seeing that kind of data, but it is a lagging indicator of where the
Right.
market will go. If you can understand the sentiment ahead of time, you can understand these things. We talked about in another video that the market being kind of feeling a little better now really isn't a
Yep.
surprise. And I'm not saying we
Right.
had an absolute crystal ball, but I think we had more confidence sooner than other people did because we were sitting on a really fat list of sentiment data, and we knew that a self-fulfilling prophecy was on the way, barring a black swan event. So
Right.
let's flip over to the concern side for a bit. So what concerns you about the year
Mm.
ahead in the hobby? This is one where the word supply, when we did the initial word cloud, it took up the whole freaking middle of the thing. People
Yep.
are concerned about supply. They're concerned about the amount of cards that are being produced, but at the same time, we know that they want new products, they want new releases, they want things to be accessible. They want to be able
Mhm.
to afford them. They don't want everything to be cheap. That's a point that people are willing to pay a value based price, right? And
Right.
all these different product tiers can have their place in the market. It's not that everything needs to be cheap, but they do want accessible product, and then they want premium product to bring a premium value, right? And one of
Right.
the things that it takes for a premium product to bring a premium value is a collectible framework so that hopefully demand outstrips supply of that product in the future. And if you
Right.
overproduce it, that's going to screw that up. And that's why people are, I think, the most concerned with supply, right?
Yeah, let me add a point to that. So, so Topps recently changed their print run on their Sapphire. It's one of their premier
Sure.
brands. They've
Yeah.
been doing it for years, and they kept rising up because demand was going up, and they kept printing more and more. And people were concerned the last 3 years. This year, they actually are printing less. They are charging more, but they're printing less,
Yep.
and
No, we're starting
everybody
to
is
see some.
pretty
Yeah, we're
excited
definitely
about
starting
that.
to see some wheel jerks on some of that stuff. And again, I go back to what I was saying is that when you had the era where you couldn't keep anything on the shelf, where people were
Right.
front running even retail product in Target, trying to get a hold of the people that were going to stock it on the shelves and get it before it even hit the shelf. During that time, that's sending signal to businesses that have profit motives and board of directors to answer to and shareholders to answer to print more and more product, and then being able to time the scale back of some of that is something that you have to understand sentiment driven data, and the earlier you can
Right.
understand it, the earlier you can predict it, and that sort of thing. And people are really good, man, really good at telling you how they feel, and they're
Hmm.
really good at recognizing problems. They aren't very good at telling you what the solutions need to be because they don't have the data to do it. It's not that they're not smart enough, they just don't have what they need to be able to shape a solution, but they can tell you when there's a problem, and they can tell you how they feel. Those are two things that human
Right.
beings are really good at. And and so when we start looking at attitudinal sentiment type data, if we can shape something into help me identify a problem or help me understand how you feel, those two things we can get with just such a level of accuracy, and then those are the leading indicators to the market. And so the
Right.
fact that there is this concern about supply, and it's up there almost at 50%, almost as much concern about this as we saw excitement about new products. So again, start thinking how those two things relate to each other. There is an interesting needle here that manufacturers need to thread, including ourselves at
Right.
Blokpax.
Yeah, and so one of the things that's really interesting in that is how much do you actually print and how much do you use data as sentiment like this one in your decision making process? So the easy answer for almost every business is, hey, we're selling it and there's still demand, just print, print, print. And then
Sure.
one day it'll level off. Well, what usually happens, print, 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 crash. There's not
100%.
leveling going on,
100%. And when
right?
that happens and people feel that they've been burned, that's where you really end up with systemic risks to your business. So it's the age
Right.
old adage of pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. It's something that I focus on all the time. Like I want to be here. I want our business to be here for well after I'm dead and gone. And for us to do that, we have to try to get supply
Yep.
and demand to balance out. So again, too much supply being created is something. And then again, I would say obviously the counterpoint to that especially Fanatics is saying is they're saying they're going to bring the demand, right? So we'll see.
Hmm.
We'll see if that happens,
Hmm.
because if they bring it and it's sustainable demand and it's not just this flash in the pan like we saw when all the sneaker flippers came in to
Right.
chase modern basketball cards in the post-COVID era. It would change the hobby, and then the supply wouldn't be a problem. But right now it's something that
Right.
people are concerned about. Next up on the list, right at 30%, just a tick under it, is group breakers, making it harder for individuals to afford sealed product. This is one that you wouldn't be surprised if you listened in on social media. This is one where the chatter gets to a very high level. And you and I have
Yep.
cut some other videos, specifically like on the CCG side, where we've talked about how the chatter and a loud vocal minority can be greatly overestimated by a company of how much they
Right.
really are. This is one where I don't think it's overestimated. When you hear the chatter of anti-group breaker, it really is there. Now, it's also working because group
Right.
breakers are tunning it. They're tunning it, especially in this era of those big chases. There is a segment, the more, degen side of the hobby, that thrill to sit in a room online with a group of people on your couch. You can talk to them. You can have a ball game on and a group breaker's breaking. And a lot of those group breakers, the
Right.
ones that are most successful, they're very entertaining. They do a good job. And so it's it does have a bit of a gamble to it. And there's a segment of the market that likes it, but there's a lot of concern. There is a lot of
Yep.
concern, and it's something that I think the manufacturers and those that are supporting it definitely want to be careful about. And
Yep.
look, I'll say unapologetically, we have products that we hope breakers are going to enjoy breaking. It's an important part of the value proposition in the hobby, but it's also something that we recognize we need to be very mindful of and make sure that it doesn't ultimately cause harm to the products that we're building. So at
Let
least
me
we
let me
we
say
hear
one
you for sure.
let me say one thing on that. So I was against breaking for a while. It's still not my cup of tea, but I do it every once in a while. But one thing I've noticed that's changed a lot, or at least became apparent to me, is that a lot of breaking's about community. You go to the same breakers and you actually see the same people in there and you have discussions and the comments are just blowing up on those breakers boards. And what
Friendship,
I think you're
right?
seeing,
Friendships.
yeah,
Yeah, new
exactly.
friendships.
So I think that's an important part of what breaking is beyond just them being greedy and
Yep.
them just trying to break them and getting special attention.
Yep.
It's about community, it's about friendship.
Yep, it definitely is a more social experience for sure.
Yeah.
You see it in the chat. You feel like you're interacting with the person that's talking to you. When you open the product on your own, unless you gather your kid or somebody else, I mean, you are sitting there. I mean, like one of the popular things on social media is a car break, right? The people buy the
Right.
product and they sit in their car and like, all right, I'm gonna
Yeah.
car break it because I just can't even wait to get home. But you're alone, right? And I'm not saying it's bad, but it's different.
Right.
And I think that's where breaking kind of fits in. And for those that are opposed to it and hate it, I would say that it has its place. And I will say that you can like it or you can not like it, but you might as well learn to love it because it's going to be here. Like that's true. I don't think it's going
Yeah.
anywhere. Even
I
if
don't either.
even if some of the more aggressive takes that it's got some regulatory hair on it, those are problems that can be solved, right? So the
Right.
idea that in a break somebody rips and they don't get anything, so using a lottery law to say that shouldn't be and that should be illegal, I get the intellectual side of that, and it's a little weird. It's not quite that cut and dry, but I understand that. But it would be very easy for fanatics to pack out products that every pack in the box is a team pack, and you're going to get a
Right.
hit. I might get a common for the Braves, and you might get some really super rare card that's an autograph for the Rockies, right? And so
Yep.
those are problems that the industry can solve should they need to be solved. So I'm not
Right.
really worried that breaking is going to go away. It may need to adjust, but I think it's here to stay. And the
Yep.
question then becomes, what is its place in the hobby to make for a healthier ecosystem overall? And if it's making friendships and it's producing revenue for the companies that they need, the companies need revenue. They got to pay the licenses for the stuff or to make their own IP or whatever they're doing. You got to have revenue. And if it's helping to drive those things and spin those flywheels and it's done responsibly, I think breaking has a nice place within the hobby.
Yeah, I
Next up,
want to add one other quick thing to that.
sure.
One other thing I think is really important, and we've done this at Blokpax actually, is that it introduces you to new sets. It introduces you to cards that you have never seen before.
That's true.
I personally break. The only time I break is when I want to see something I've never seen or had or held or looked at or had wherever it is. I want to be introduced to it because it's a lot cheaper to do it that way.
That's 100% true. So like back when I was really my modern baseball collecting was really Bowman Chrome, and specifically going after prospect autos, I would always jump in a couple of early breaks when the product released, so that I could get a better feel of what was coming
Right.
out of the boxes for sure.
Yep. Yep.
So next up is we already mentioned the large bounties creating too much of a lottery ticket feel. That comes in at the 19.8% that we discussed earlier. And then right under it, again, it's a correlation to the other side, my kids not being able to enjoy the hobby. So you're starting to feel on this concern side, there isn't a sentiment here that people are starting to feel. And where they want their kids to be able to enjoy the hobby. They want to bring their kids into the hobby. And then again, think about what we said earlier: new releases of my favorite products, and then over on this side, too many products
Yeah.
market. But
Right.
but I will say that this one is where the pro is way overwhelming to the negative. You're talking 16.8% on the
Right.
concern side compared to 50% over on the excited side. I think it's definitely clear. People want new products. People want diversity. People want depth. They want to find lanes they can collect in. They don't just want the same old tired stuff rehashed and pushed back out. They're excited about new stuff. So, and then there's a lot of other stuff that gets down in there. People still worry about redemptions not getting sent out. They worry about the well-being of their local hobby shop. They do worry about fanatics possibly doing things on that 10xing the hobby side that could be a problem. One that I was very, very surprised how much where it fell on the list is that we saw too many cards being graded. Okay, so there is absolutely right now an overwhelming chatter on social media and
Hmm.
comments, all stuff, junk slab era, right?
Right.
Junk slab era is its own thing and its own word, right? And it's something that if you just came in and you only listen to social media chatter, you could very
Yeah.
quickly believe that that's a huge, huge problem that people are really, really concerned about. Now, will it ultimately, how big of a problem will it be? Time will tell. But as far
Right.
as where people's minds are when presented with all these choices that they could choose from, only 11% saying that they think too many cards are getting graded. I was very surprised at that one because it feels like there's a lot more people that are really concerned about that. And so,
Right.
um, really something there that goes to dispel the idea of at least sentiment driven on the junk slab era
Right.
mindset. And we'll see what it does over time. We'll see how those slabs hold up. So anything else there on the concern side, Fish, that you want to hit before we wrap this one up? I don't want us to run too long here. Respect people's time.
No, part of data like this that we're seeing is you need to digest it, right? You got to be able to put the your own connections in your own head. And what does this mean? Correlation. So um, there's some surprises on both sides for me, and it's going to make me think more. And I need to digest. But I can tell you right now, having this data is a lot better than not having this data.
Yep, yep. No, and I look forward to continuing to tell everybody what we found, and shaping up and sending a more full report as we get into the next quarter and all the sampling is done here, and really letting you, those of you that participated in the study, get the benefit of the study, right?
Yeah.
And again, I really appreciate everyone taking it. Again, I'm not saying that anything we did here today is earth shattering. There's not other than just making sure that we had good representative sample of the hobby. That's really the focus on these particular questions. Nothing wild and crazy and proprietary about what we did other than the sampling and making sure that we sampled it properly, which I
Right.
did hit that on other videos, but I will say again, really, really clearly, it's easy to do a market research study. You can go and pay couple $1,000 and you can get 500 respondents into a survey. There's online platforms that will allow you to do that. The problem is that everyone who does those, they all fish within the same universe of survey takers, and they come from a few
Mhm.
mainly large panel providers, and their whole business is to provide panel. And these folks don't like it when I say this, but I'm completely comfortable saying it from my chest. Panel companies, the people that are in those panels, they're generally incentivized by getting some points to take a survey, and those points then can get redeemed for something. But if you back it out, they're working for well below the minimum wage to take studies. And doctors and lawyers and people that own their own businesses and that are busy, they don't do those things. They don't take those studies. We take studies in different ways. We don't offer points. I won't say ever. There are some times where if we're doing something where we just need a lower affluence group, then yeah, you can go there and get it. But as a general rule, we are sampling to try to make sure that we have the whole market. And so some of you may have come in by just seeing, hey, here's a chance to win a product. And you may say, well, then why would people that have money, why would a doctor do that? Because doctors that care about their hobby will do that. Whereas if it
Right.
was when a MacBook computer, that doctor probably turns his head and goes the other way. But when it's when
Right.
something specific like that, then the doctor, the lawyer, the person that's busy, they will hit it. And then sometimes, and a lot of you came in, if you think back to how you found it, it was literally just, we need your feedback. And
Right.
we want your feedback because we need to fill holes. We are targeting you specifically. And we say, hey, we need people like you. And that also brings in some of the samples. So, getting out that non-response bias, because if we had just gone to a panel provider and we had just had a bunch of, if it had been a lower affluent cut of the market, the data would have been incredibly skewed because those people
Right.
they have concerns, and other people that don't have those concerns that aren't weighted. It's called non-response bias. If you want to look it up, it can come from not getting the right people into the study to begin with, and it can come from people abandoning your survey before it's finished. But it crushes the reliability of data. It's a dirty secret in the world of market research. I'm one of the few and only people that talk about it, and a lot of companies make a lot of bad decisions because of non-response bias, and that's one of the big reasons why this data is more valuable. So stick with us. We're going to keep bringing you more and more of this stuff, and we're going to try to build some really exciting products for the hobby as well. Love for you to check those out. We'll always want to have more folks in our own ecosystem, but not here to shill today, here to just share some data. So Fish, anything else that you want to do to wrap it up here?
No, I just think it's unbelievable data that gives me the choice to use it as a tool.
Awesome. And if you haven't seen them, we posted a couple of other things recently where we're in this same data. Drop back on the YouTube and look for those, and I think you'll find some insights that you might find particularly interesting. So everyone, have a great day, and we'll see you next time.